Hi, I'm Iain Dickson. I'm a minister of a place called Te Puke in New Zealand. That has a population of 7,000 people. I've been ministering there for 7 years. I also have a family, a wife and 3 children. I've been a Christian for 25 years, minister for 7. And it's just been a real joy to minister to people out there at Te Puke. At the beginning of this year, I sensed a restlessness in my spirit that we should be doing more as a church to reach out to non-Christians. And so for the last 7 months, we've been looking at evangelism and how to reach out into the community. We've invited guest speakers to come in and talk to us about the subject. And so they gave us some good examples of just going out there and bridging relationships and friendships and establishing those. And I thought, oh yeah, well, this is exactly what we need. And then I was invited to go along to a Julian Bachelor Evangelism Conference and how to change the DNA of the church to evangelism. I thought, oh yeah, this is probably much where we are at the moment. And so I went along. But boy, it blew me down. I was really surprised to find out that what we had been doing wasn't really evangelism. It wasn't sowing the gospel. It was really the ploughing stage. And so after the conference, I spoke to Julian and said, look, is there something that we can do? And he sent a staff member by OSC Ministries down to us called Gary. And Gary said, look, probably the best way to reach out into the community was by a survey. And look, I'll put some questions together and you can go out and make a start. That survey sat on my desk for 2 weeks. I was a bit reluctant to go out, and then I had a phone call from Julian just to follow up and to see how things were going. And then he just said to me, Ian, you've got to lead by example, you just got to do it. And so that afternoon I picked up the survey, I went out into my car and went out to the poorer part of Te Puke, and I knocked on my first door, and I was nervous, I'll tell you what, I really was. The first person looked at me, she was a Maori girl. She thought I was there to repossess her TV, but I was there to evangelise and share the gospel. And I did the survey, and it was really good, just asking, do you know where the Presbyterian church is? And then that went and followed on to the needs of the community. Did she know what they were? And then on to some God questions. And then I left her a track explaining the whole gospel. Oh, I just felt so good afterwards. I've been doing that for the last 2 or 3 weeks. I would have knocked on 50 doors. 2 people gave their hearts to the Lord. It was just so exciting. I've been taking out my elder with me, training her up how to do it. And these were 2 Indian young men. They invited me in. The hospitality of the Indian community is just absolutely wonderful, incredible. And so what happened was that I saw a laptop around, and I just asked if he would mind going on to the internet and looking at the BibleIn11.com website. And he did, and he had surround sound, so this added to that presentation. He was glued to that screen. His flatmate had just gone out to get some Coke from the dairy to come back to serve us, and he popped back and they began to speak in their language. And I thought that he was trying to encourage him not to make that step. Who is this Jesus, in their language and that? Because I heard the name Jesus being spoken 2 or 3 times. But this Indian guy turned around to me and said, look, my flatmate wants to give his life to Jesus as well. I just explained the gospel to what I saw it on the presentation. And so here we had 2 people wanting to surrender their lives. So I then repeated the gospel message to his flatmate, and yes, he was ready. And so we bowed down and he gave their life to the Lord. Reflecting over this last 2-3 weeks, I would have said that, evangelism wouldn't really work, because out of 50 people I've shared the gospel, only 2 gave their hearts to the Lord. I now realise that I was successful because I witnessed to 50 people, and I planted the seed in 50 lives. Those 2 who gave their hearts to the Lord was the icing on the cake. It was a real thrill. But I'm just as excited in all the conversations that I had with those 50 other people. And I always ask, look, do you have anything that I can pray for right now? And I've had a blind person who was blind in one eye and going blind and yelling. He said, you can pray for my sight. I've had young men, I've been half a dozen now, wanting work. Pray that God will give us work. and I've been going through and praying for people, and it's reminding me of what this was like when Jesus went around in the community. If you're a minister like me, you probably sense a frustration going on in your heart. And I think it's the Holy Spirit just causing us that, hey, there's something more to what we're doing. Just trying to disciple Christians who've been Christians for most of their lives in the church with little fruit of bringing non-Christians in. That's frustrating. I thought evangelism was just the non-Christian coming in with the funerals that I was taking, you know, trying to win some of them by planting the seed. I realised that that's plan B. Plan A is for us to go out there and lead by example. You know, Paul told Timothy to do the work of an evangelist, and you know, I'm not an evangelist, but you know, I'm a Timothy, I'm a pastor. I've got a shepherd's heart, but my heart is also for the many others who are out there in the community. Jesus said himself that he left the 99 to go out after the one sheep that was lost. And I'm a bit like that, and I know that many of you are as well. And I think the Lord is encouraging us to lead by example. We have to leave the 99 in good care with other leaders, and for us to go out there and to find that one who was lost. And what a thrill that will be as we lead them back into the fold. Just want to finish by sharing a little story that started me off on this journey. I dropped my daughter off to youth group. This was over at the Mount. This is when the Irish were playing, I think USA at the time. And I said, look, I'm going to do a bit of evangelising and put this to work. So I had my wee card that showed, led the person to the Bible11.com website. And I went into an Irish pub, and all the Irish people were there cheering their team on, great atmosphere. After the game, there was a person sitting beside me. I then had a casual conversation, and then I presented this card about where it shows you how to become a Christian. And blow me down, he was already a Christian, but he had backslidden. He was miles away from God. And we had a conversation, and I led him a prayer right there in the Irish pub. And again, that reminded me of that parable, how Jesus left the 99 to go out there to search for the one that was lost. So I really encourage you just to do that and to give it a go, and you will inspire countless others. Bless you. Yeah, my journey has just been so exciting, but you know, I really want to talk about my own personality, because you know, I'm not an extrovert, I am an introvert. And that's the thought of going out there and talking to a stranger. It caused my heart to race. It certainly does, and I get all nervous just thinking about it. But the Lord will give you strength, He will give you courage, He will give you boldness. This is what it says in His Word as we step out in faith. So picture the scene. You're walking down the poorer parts of your town. You're going down a driveway. There's dogs on either side of houses. There's a cluster of houses further on down the driveway. Someone's mowing their lawns. They all look a bit rough, the houses. You see a couple of cars there, and there's teenagers and one of them, and they're sort of hanging out. And then an older guy, another one under his bonnet fixing it, and they're Samoans. And so I go up there and just thinking to myself, Lord, I'd rather be somewhere else. Lord, give me the boldness, give me the courage. And then you go and then you say, hi, my name is Iain. And then you have a conversation with them. That happened, that guy was working under the bonnet. He turned around and gave me the biggest smile you could ever imagine. He was a Christian himself. He's from one of the islands that's around Samoa. And he says to me, I've been here for 15 years, and you know, there's 20 other families just like my own, and we're trying to get established here in Te Puke. Wow, he said, come inside and we'll have a conversation. And what a wonderful conversation that we had. And you're having these conversations all the time. You're meeting new people. They're just like you and I. And it's just a great opportunity to go and to meet new people, to share the gospel if they've never heard the gospel before. But I tell you what, you can build a relationship in 5 minutes. and you go back and you can follow up, and yeah, it's just a really great. So I really encourage you to go ahead and do that. I think of this other lady. I run a 60+ group for the elderly, a small group in the afternoon once a week. And it's that lady who's about 73. She cried out in anguish. She says, I've been a Christian most of my life. I have never witnessed to one person. I am just full of fear. What can I do? So I went up there and I prayed for her that she'll have boldness and courage. I gave her 6 evangelistic pamphlets, and I said to her, you just got to go ahead and do that. You just go, even if you do it anonymously, even on the way home you put it in somebody's letterbox, it will break the fear. You know what she did? She came back the next day just so enthusiastic. She said, Iain, I have witnessed to 6 people. Well, there was someone at the supermarket and we had a conversation. I gave her the pamphlet. On the way home I popped into the dairy. There was someone there and I gave her the pamphlet. Someone just outside the dairy, and then we had a conversation. And then she received a pamphlet. Then at the rest home where I live, there were a couple of people there as well. But I gave all 6 out. And boy, I can do this. Anybody can do that. You know, I really had to set a time aside in my busy schedule, and as pastors you are pretty busy. I have a shorter lunch hour now, but I go out between 1 and 3. Maybe 2 or 3 times during the week, but I just pencil it in my diary just so that I can go around and knock on doors. And what a real thrill and excitement that is. If you just want to encourage you to do that. So that's important. Because our eldership are now geared up to evangelism, what's happening is that God is bringing non-Christians into the church. We had one on Sunday morning. I spoke to him after the service. He said, look, it's just so stressful out there. I'm not a Christian, but I hope the church has the answer because the world doesn't. And so I gave him a DVD presentation of the Bible11.com. I gave him some follow-up on how to become a Christian and how to get to heaven. We then invited him around for lunch and a bit of hospitality. And so he's going to go home and look at all that, and I'm sure he's going to come back the following Sunday, and it won't be long before he'll give his life to Jesus Christ. That evening we had a service. 2 Indian young men were compelled to come along to church. We had a prayer and praise, and we asked them, how come you were here tonight? How come you decided to come into our church? And they said, well, we just felt that we needed to come. They weren't Christians, they didn't know anything really about Jesus, they'd never seen a Bible in their lives. And so we automatically sort of get up into evangelism mode, put that hat on, and we showed the Bible11.com on the big screen. And then we just really encouraged them and prayed for them, gave them a passage of scripture from Psalm 131 where it talks about how God was leading David, and we just really encouraged them that God led you to this place. We sowed the seed, we gave them the information that they needed, we blessed them, we prayed for them. And if God is bringing these people, these non-Christians, into our church, it could only be because now we're beginning to focus on evangelism, and that we've got their tools to sow the gospel. And so I really encourage you to really begin to think about that as you go out there, as you train your eldership, and your leadership team about evangelism, you will begin to pick up some principles about how it is to sow the seed. And there are 6 stages to that. And there is the ploughing. It's important that the heart is ploughed. Then there's the seed, when you share the gospel in its entirety, and it's quite easy to do that. And then there is also the watering that's going on. And guys, we're just so good at watering. We're there, we're praying, we're going out, we're forming relationships, we've got some great programs. So the watering is going to take place. And then God will cause the growth. He will cause the growth. You know, I have an elder in our church who's been running a Christian camp through the high school for the last 20 years. And she was always beating herself up. After 30, 40 would come forward and say the prayer of surrendering their lives to the Lord. But the discipling the following stage, she only gets about 2 or 3 every time. And she says, what about those other 37? Well, the seed was planted, but God will cause the harvest later on, really, even though they sort of said that prayer. And so she's in a new place. And so there's the sowing of the seed. We will get a harvest, I'm sure of that, as we diligently go out and evangelise. And then the final stage is the discipling. And wouldn't it be great if we were discipling new Christians rather than Christians who've been Christians for 20, 30 years. So bless you. At the DNA Change Conference, I got these resources on evangelism and introduced them to the church. There were 6 of us that went along to the conference, and so they were really excited that, hey, we're actually going to actually show it to the rest of our congregation. And I tell you what, it's just so exciting. We actually decided to do it on a Sunday morning, so we have the biggest impact. And what we do is we do the odd numbers in the morning. So that's we looked at 1, 3, 5, 7, and we looked at those ones. And in the evening numbers, in the study groups during the week. And I tell you what, it's rising the temperature of evangelism in the church. This is something that will be long lasting. It's not a fad that we're going through that's here today and gone tomorrow. It's actually changing people's perspective, and it's getting them excited about the gospel, and it's getting them to share to their friends, their workmates, their colleagues, strangers. These people would never ever have done that in the past, but now they're getting the tools, the resources to do that. And I really see a purging taking place in the hearts and lives of my parishioners, and it's just so exciting. Light bulbs are going off in people's hearts and minds as they get engaged with this material, as they talk about these questions and reflect on the answers that are presented, and people are just really blown away by that. They are just excellent resources. And I really encourage you to read the book of Julian Batchelor's Evangelism. There are so many keys and principles that I have not read anywhere else. It's just so compacted, and it will just really refresh you as you encourage your congregation to engage with this. So I really encourage you to do that.
Iain, I just want to pick up on your point about seeing the DNA change in your church. Can you tell us a little bit about what you're seeing? What are the changes? Have you had any resistance? What can other ministers expect to encounter as they introduce these resources into a church? Can you tell us a bit about your own journey? Where are you really at with that? What's really going on in terms of the change of the culture of your church?
Well, what's happening is that the small group leaders, as they begin to prepare and study for this, introduce it to their study group, realised that we needed to get the whole church on the same page. And we realised there may be a little bit of resistance to that, but as people began to engage in the DVDs and in the study notes, we began to see that people were really opening themselves up more to what evangelism really is, and displacing some of these fears that they have been having about sharing the gospel to their loved ones, to their flatmates, colleagues, workmates, non-Christians. And so it's really exciting when you hear testimonies from the congregation getting up, and we have a testimony time every morning, and it's so good when you hear ones on evangelism, how I went out and I shared the gospel, or I had an opportunity but I didn't have any resources on me. Where are those resources? And so we're making sure people get them. And so one of these resources that we try to encourage people is ones like these. This one here says the whole Bible summarized in 11 minutes, and it says how to meet God. And then on the other side it says here the Bible11.com, and people wanted to just grab some of these resources and to give them to people, just to point them to that website. Another resource is how to be sure of going to heaven when we die, so we've got plenty of these. We've got our pamphlets on the gospel, so people can just give them out. And also people are just getting themselves an understanding of what the gospel is, so they can verbally share it to their loved ones. It's just so exciting. But there's a process, and it will take a while, but before you know it, you'll have a church that's DNA is completely changed right around. And what an exciting church to pastor. I will tell you, you're going to be in for an amazing year as your congregation reaches out into the community. But it's all happened because you took the courage to lead by example.